Greetings, YouTube. I'm currently reading this book, which is really hard to do with this white balance. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And it's a gift from my friend Jan. Thank you, Jan. And it's really quite fascinating. I'm, 158 or 9 pages in. And I'm enjoying myself. And the basic gist of the book is that we think both intuitively, thinking fast, and slowly with executive function. And that while we'd like to think the executive function is charged, the intuitive function is actually in charge. And he gives numerous examples about how we are biased and how because of our intuitive thinking, we're bad at statistics and probabilities and things like that. And discovering your own bias is a major point in the book. And that a lot of people have a really difficult time telling the difference between how they see reality and reality. Now, I've spent decades working on my depression and my anxiety on my own, and then more than 5 years working with my therapist, almost 8 years now. And I've gotten a really good handle on my anxiety. As part of that, I had to come to grips with the concept that my view of reality is most definitely not reality. Having anxiety means you have a very skewed view of reality. That's part of the problem with that particular mental illness. Same thing with depression, which I also have. The cats are in the background making noise. I apologize. They're fighting over chickens. But he gives little puzzles in this book to show you how he can manipulate your thinking by giving you information, which then causes you to be biased in a decision that if you didn't have that information, you would be less likely to be biased. So I'm going to give you an example because it got under my craw when I read this today because frankly, I think the guy is categorically wrong. And he's wrong, I think, for a very simple reason. I'm going to get to that in a second. So here's the concept. He's going to describe someone named Linda. Linda's fictitious. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with the issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. So that's Linda. Then he gives 8 statements about Linda, and you have to arrange them in the order that you think is most likely to least likely. Now, I'm only concerned about 2 of them. Now, 2 of them are Linda is a bank teller. And then the last is Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. It's a little archaic way of saying that, but this puzzle was written like 30 plus years ago. The book is not that old. This guy's been around for a while. And what bugs me is that this is a gotcha. This is the puzzle. Because if the people taking this little puzzle, this little quiz essentially, said that she is more likely to be a bank teller, a feminist bank teller, as opposed to just a bank teller, you are showing your bias because you have been preloaded with the concept that she is concerned about discrimination and social justice. And that's where this falls apart for me. Now, it is absolutely true that of the 2 categories, bank teller and feminist bank teller, for shorthand, bank teller is the larger of the 2 categories. Feminist bank teller is a subgroup of bank teller. In a Venn diagram, there'd be a smaller circle inside that Venn diagram of feminist bank tellers. Then he said anyone that answered that way, that feminist bank tellers was the first choice and put bank teller after, was wrong. Because statistically, as I've just said, there are more bank tellers than there are feminist bank tellers. Now, if he were talking about a generic person, Bob, and he were to ask me, is Bob more likely to be a bank teller or a feminist bank teller? I would say bank teller, because again, there are more bank tellers than feminist bank tellers. Feminist bank tellers is a subgroup of bank teller. No argument. Anyone who said that Bob is more likely to be a feminist bank teller without knowing any other information about Bob, boom, you are objectively wrong. It's bank teller first, then feminist bank teller. But we're not talking about a generic person like Bob. We're talking about Linda, who I have specific knowledge about. So the answer is feminist bank teller. Why? Because whatever job Linda gets, bank teller, teacher, cop, bus driver, construction worker, is going to have the term feminist in front of it, because Linda is a feminist. Now, he didn't put it in those terms, but Linda is concerned about discrimination and social justice. That's intersectional feminism. So, absolutely, the answer is feminist bank teller. And he is showing his bias in this, which is deliciously ironic, because the author is not an intersectional feminist. And in fact, he's not intersectional at all. He has shown in this book so far, in the first 158 pages I've read, numerous occasions where he's put these little puzzles up and hasn't taken into consideration class or race. So the answers I am going to give are going to factor those in a way that he isn't. So he is going to score me more lowly, more incorrect, because I'm giving a more accurate answer than he is, because I'm actually considering a finer degree of granularity than the author is, because he is blind to class and racism, because he's a really white dude, an older, really white dude. Yes, he's Jewish, so white nationalists would only consider him white under certain circumstances. The rest of the time, they'd just shoot him. But he's still an older white dude. And he's not taking into consideration gender or class or race. Just like he isn't with the example of Linda. Also, he's coming at this from the statistics and probability, and he won an award in economics. Now, it's the Nobel Prize in Economics. I put it in quotes because there is no such thing as a Nobel Prize in Economics. There isn't. There is a prize given out by a Swiss bank that is dedicated to Alfred Nobel, which is why this prize is called the Nobel Prize in Economics. But it is not part of the Nobel Prize structure. They're completely separate. This has nothing to do with the Nobel Prize. And anyone who tells you that there's a Nobel Prize in economics is either being foolish or is pushing an agenda. Because economics, getting a prize in economics is a lot like getting a prize in alchemy. Neither is science. Now, alchemy eventually became chemistry. Arguably an offshoot of physics. Don't tell chemists that. And maybe someday economics will become a real science. But right now, it isn't. And this author is coming at this from the position of an economist. And I've seen the same kind of characteristics in accountants and in engineers. People that deal with lots of numbers, particularly men, over time, seem to forget that those numbers are a simulation of reality. They are not reality. Reality is different. So he seems to be taking the position that if Linda were to go to become a bank teller, that she would, on her first day, roll dice to see if she gets to maintain her feminism? Otherwise, that she would become a bank teller sans feminism? Because statistically, there are more bank tellers than feminist bank tellers? He's imposing his numbers on a human, admittedly a fictional human, but a human. He's saying that the numbers dictate her behavior, her character. Whereas in reality, her character dictates her occupation. And you can be a feminist anything. I'm an intersectional feminist. At least I try. I know I don't succeed all the time. I work in a factory. If you were to look at my politics and my philosophical worldview, this author would tell you I don't exist. Because I am very much a statistical anomaly in the greater scheme of things. I'm an aggressively progressive, intersectional feminist pagan that plays role-playing games and builds post-apocalyptic weapons as a hobby. I am a blip of a blip of a blip. I am such a small minority as I am almost statistically non-existent. Which is what this guy would tell you. Oh, sorry if my camera was blinking. No, it's just the light off the book. So, big ass hole in this guy's consideration. And that big ass hole is his bias. His misunderstanding of the puzzle he himself has presented to us. Because he's not an intersectional feminist. Because he's an old conservative white dude who may be a lot less conservative. He might be a establishment Democrat for all I know. Maybe he's a Republican. But you could be center-right and still be a Democrat. That's what most of them are. Most of them don't consider them socialists. Some of them are considering voting for the shit given because they don't want an actual socialist in office, which means they're not Democrats. So this dude is coming from an old space, a conservative space, and it's shading his book. It's shading what he's said and what he's done, and now I don't know where my bookmark went. Okay, there it is. Okay, sure. Gave me panic. And he's showing his bias, which is deliciously ironic. And it's probably the only pleasant thing to happen to me so far today. So thank you, Jan, for that bit of entertainment. I'm going to continue reading the book. I'm hoping that he shows less of his bias as we go, as he achieves his goal of showing the rest of us all of our bias. Here's that irony again.